Epic trolling is currently underway at the White House. We're talking like the most epic trolling I've ever seen. President Donald Trump and his administration, man, they know how to get things done. They know how to get the media to react in ways that the media doesn't want to react. Epic trolling is currently underway at the White House. We're talking why that keeps happening. And man, if you want if you want to see some epic trolling, don't go anywhere because I'm going to show it to you here in just a minute. We have so much going on. This was one of the busiest weekends as we get closer and closer to President Donald Trump's first 100 days in office, which is tomorrow. As we get closer and closer to that monumental, I mean, you want to talk about a landmark, President Donald Trump's second term. His first 100 days and all of the incredible things that have happened. It's amazing that the vultures are circling. They're waiting for Donald Trump to fail. It's not happening. They're actually trying to fabricate failures that just don't exist. If you can imagine this, the fake news media is lying about Donald Trump and his accomplishments. The fake news media is lying about how great this country is. I know. It's shocking, right? It's shocking that the fake news media, well, they would be reporting fake news, but that's exactly what they are. Let's start, though, before we get to anything else, before we dive into Tom Homan Day at the White House, before we get into Marco Rubio just sticking it to NBC News, before we get into 60 Minutes lying about how they lied, which is crazy, before we get to the judges or the economy or Adam Schiff, who... Man, Adam Schiff, that guy's got to be shaking in his boots. He's got to have, his shorts have got to be full of Schiff because he's so panicked. President Donald Trump openly name-checked him and threatened to throw him behind bars. And in fact, basically said that's where Senator Adam Schiff is going to be before too long. And he's got all the evidence. We'll get to that story. But before we get to any of that, I want to show you what President Donald Trump has done at the White House this morning. In fact, I'll let the MSNBC reporters tell you about it because they're particularly disgusted by it.
White House has put up about 100 posters of what they say are unauthorized immigrants who have been arrested for violent crimes. You can see them there. They put them up on the driveway of the White House. If you look here, that's the West Wing just at the forefront, the executive mansion itself to the left. But what's particularly noteworthy about this location is it is right directly behind the positions where TV correspondents do their hits from the White House lawn. So therefore, no matter what network you're on, that includes MSNBC, if you're doing a hit from the White House right now, those pictures will be behind you. The White House doing a briefing in about a half hour about what they're doing here.
The White House placed photos, big like yard signs, the kind of yard sign you would have if, you put a candidate or if you're selling your house. There's a row, a murderer's row, if you will. And it's illegal immigrants who've been arrested and deported, sexual assault of a child, sexual battery on a child, murder, rape, all of these illegal criminals that Tom Homan and ICE have rounded up. They've sent back to their country. A lot of them are in El Salvador and Seco. And MSNBC is furious that President Donald Trump and his administration have put these signs up, not just anywhere at the White House, but right in the shot for every single network television channel. If you are doing a live hit at the White House, these signs are going to be in your shot. If you are doing a hit at the White House, you have no choice but to show everybody watching your network, murderers and homicidal maniacs and rapists, all illegal immigrants, all over 100 of them that have been rounded up by President Donald Trump, by his crew, and sent back home. And this is deliberate. They did this deliberately, of course, because the media is ignoring the story. The media is ignoring how exceptionally effective President Donald Trump has been at securing the country, at securing the border, at deporting these people. Look, the thing goes on and on and on and on. And all of the little media tents are set up there so that it can't be avoided. If you go to the White House and you're a member of the media, you can't do a live hit without these signs in the background. In fact, here's James Blair talking to, well, you know what? Let's do Peter Doocy first. Here's Peter Doocy from Fox News, bird victim and reporter, explaining exactly what you just heard.
You can see behind us in the wider shot, the North Lawn is dotted with 100 yard signs that show illegal immigrant mugshots next to the heinous crime that they have been accused of. And if there are judges in this country who are trying to help these illegal immigrants, the 100 listed on the lawn, avoid prosecution, then the White House has a big problem with them too.
Yeah, look at that. And Peter Doocy, I mean, I'm just going to stay on the shot for a minute. You can see there's Peter Doocy. He's standing in his regular spot. That's the exact spot where he always stands. That's the exact spot where the bird swooped down and attacked his quaff, if you will. And there's signs. You can see just in Peter Doocy's shot alone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 signs. And you can see the photo. You can see it says rape. You can see it says aggravated assault on one of them. I mean, child pornography. It's just horrible crimes. And these are all there for the networks to cover, because the networks aren't covering this kind of stuff. James Blair was there with our good buddy Brian Kilmeade, and James Blair, who worked at the White House, said this.
Well, look, the mainstream media, as you know, Brian, doesn't want to cover this story. What we've done is get violent criminals and other lowlifes on the street. It's literally a murderer's row here on the lawn of the White House, and these are people that we've taken out of the country since we came into office. Last month, we had the lowest border crossings on record, and that's a result of not new legislation, as Biden said we would need, but just a new president getting the job done. We've reunited over 5,000 children with their families or a safe guardian since we came into office. We're cleaning up our communities. We're getting rid of all these guys. I mean, look at these. These are all heinous crimes. These are violent crimes. That would be a Law and Order episode, and we have to get all of them out of the country.
So, it's epic trolling at its finest. It's what the media shows up on a Monday and they're all ready to talk about whatever it is they wanted to talk about. They want to talk about poll numbers that are declining. They want to talk about President Donald Trump at the Vatican wearing a blue suit, which is the stupidest story I've ever seen in my entire life. They want to try to put a dark sheen on President Donald Trump's first 100 days. And Donald Trump says, no. This is my White House. This is my administration. I will declare what the narrative is. I will direct the story. Here's what you're reporting on today. You're reporting on over 100 people who are illegal criminal aliens here in the country committing heinous crimes that we have now deported. You are going to talk about immigration, how successful it is, and you are going to let these activist district court judges know that what we are doing is protecting Americans, saving Americans, and we're doing it by taking people who never should have been here out of the country, people who are criminals, violent gang members, and we're sending them back home because we don't want them terrorizing our citizens. Let them go sit in a jail in El Salvador, or let them go terrorize citizens in their own countries, not here in the United States of America. And if you're a judge and you want to obstruct justice, if you're a judge and you want to hide a criminal alien in your courtroom, or even worse, in your home, if you want to take a Tren de Aragua murderer and you want to put him in your house with your teenage kids, and you want to give them assault rifles and send them to the range so they can keep their skills sharp, if you want to do that, that's fine. But you're not going to be allowed to stay in your house. You're not going to be allowed to practice law. We're going to round you up. We're going to throw you in prison. And we don't care who complains about it. Man, the media, they are complaining about it so much. The media, they are so mad. They are so mad at President Donald Trump for, I guess, what is it for? They say that President Donald Trump has arrested these judges. They say that Donald Trump is arresting judges, and that's the last step before total fascism. Donald Trump pulled the beast up to some dude's house and walked out himself and threw the cuffs on him. These are judges who are accused of breaking the law. They were harboring illegal aliens. They were obstructing justice. And as we know in this country, as the Democrats have told us over and over and over again, no one is above the law. In fact, when President Donald Trump was arrested, or when President Donald Trump was charged over and over again by the federal government, by forces in New York City and New York State and Atlanta, Georgia, and Miami, when the FBI raided his house looking for top secret documents, yada, yada, yada. When all those things happened, the media and the hypocrites on the left were more than happy to remind us that nobody is above the law. Well, now that Democrat activist judges are getting arrested, all of a sudden, there are apparently some people who are above the law. That's not what you said 2 years ago, and we can prove it. Watch this very lengthy yet informative montage of hypocritical Democrats on television saying no one is above the law when President Trump gets arrested.
The idea that no person is above the law is a bedrock principle of American justice.
No man is above the law, no matter what the crime.
And I agree with you. No man is above the law, and no person is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one's above the law.
No one is above the law.
No man is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No man is above the law.
He has to be held accountable. He's not above the law.
No one's above the law. Either that nor any other title puts you above the rule of law. And
No one is truly above the law.
That is what it means to have a rule of law. That is what it means to not have a king.
They're not above the law.
nobody is above the law.
Everyone will be treated, as Merrick Garland has said, as equally.
That no one is above the law, which is foundational.
No one is above the law, even a former president.
We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone.
No one is above the law.
The law is the law, and no one should be above it.
And yes, nobody is above the law. No one is above the law.
No one else is above the law, including a president.
Nobody is above the law. You can't have two justice systems in America. It has to be one justice system. And anybody who breaks the law should be held accountable.
And that no one is above the law.
No one is above the law, and our president is not above the law. I always thought that this country, that no one was above the law, especially the president.
I mean, it could go on and on. That was like 1 minute. There's probably 9 more minutes of these people repeatedly saying the same thing. No one is above the law. No one is above the law. No one is above the law. Okay, great. Then let's round up these judges and throw them in prison because no one's above the law. Well, wait a minute. Now you're being a fascist. Now, this is just anarchy. Donald Trump has to be stopped. He's arresting judges. He's trying to be a king. He's trying to be a dictator. Wait a minute. What happened to no one is above the law? What happened to that? They're mad. They're mad because Donald Trump, they think that Donald Trump's mad at the judges for telling him that he can't deport people, or telling him that he can't use the Alien Enemies Act, or telling him that he has to turn the planes around. They think Donald Trump's mad at all of these district court judges for laying down laws that for reiterating what he can and can't do. Donald Trump is saying, you don't dictate foreign policy, and these district court judges are saying, yes, we do. You know what AOC said about that? When she didn't get when the Texas courts ruled on abortion drugs and she didn't like it. This is my favorite too. This was what she advised Joe Biden and his administration to do.
You've heard the news this afternoon, a couple hours ago. What did you think?
Well, I think rulings like this, and I think we've seen from the FDA and also from activity in Congress, that some of these rulings, I think we've been preparing and anticipating for there being these egregious overreaches by members of the judiciary appointed by a right-wing Republican Party whose goal for a very long time was to just pack these courts with partisan judges, often underqualified or completely unqualified for their role. And so there has been thought, I believe, given to this. Senator Ron Wyden has already issued statements, for example, advising what we should do in a situation like this, which I concur, which is that I believe that the Biden administration should ignore this ruling. Look at that. The
Biden administration, she says, should ignore this ruling. They've been packing the courts. The right-wing extremists have been packing the courts with right-wing extreme judges, many of whom are totally underqualified. When I think of underqualified judges, you know who I think of? Ketanji Brown Jackson, who Joe Biden said, I don't know who I'm going to pick, but it's going to be a black woman. I don't care if she's qualified or not. That's what I think of when I think of packing the court for reasons other than, merit-based reasons. But anyway, I digress. Here's the final part of this.
That the courts have the legitimacy and they rely on the legitimacy of their rulings. And what they are currently doing is engaged in an unprecedented and dramatic erosion of the legitimacy of the courts. It is the justices themselves, through the deeply partisan and unfounded nature of these rulings, that are undermining their own enforcement.
So you're saying the Biden administration should ignore this court, but what does that look like? What does that actually mean?
I think the interesting thing when it comes to a ruling is that it relies on enforcement. And it is up to the Biden administration to choose whether or not to enforce such a ruling.
Okay, now here's the interesting thing about this. She's laid out the Democrat playbook. The Democrat playbook is if you're the president and you're a Democrat like Joe Biden and you get a court ruling, whether it's the Supreme Court or a district court or a Texas court or whatever, and the court says you can't do that, you should just ignore it if it goes against your political agenda, and then you should refuse to enforce it, because that's one of the checks and balances we have. The judiciary states what's constitutional and what's not constitutional, and the executive branch is the law enforcement branch. So if the judiciary says you can't do this, you have to do that, and the executive branch says fine, but doesn't enforce it, then we're at a standstill. We don't have, then it doesn't go into effect. And that's what happened with Joe Biden. That's what Joe Biden did over and over again. The courts would tell him to do something and he just ignored them. The courts would tell him that you can't just evict people because there's COVID. The CDC has no jurisdiction to keep banks from evicting people or landlords from evicting people because there's some kind of pandemic. And Joe Biden said, okay, fine. You know what, though? We're just going to keep doing it. The court said you can't pay back student loans. And Joe Biden said, okay, fine. But you know what? We're still going to just do it, because that's what AOC said. Ignore the ruling and don't enforce it. That was their playbook when the Democrats were in charge. Now Donald Trump's in charge. Now the shoe is on the other foot. La Zapato es en el otro pie, as they say in AOC's home district of the Bronx. And what that means is that now Donald Trump looks at these district court rulings and says, well, you know what? I'm just going to ignore it.
I believe that the Biden administration should ignore this ruling.
Or I'm just not going to enforce it. And at the same time, that's Donald Trump's. I mean, look, that falls under the purview of the executive branch. That's exactly what's going to happen. In fact, Tom Homan said something very similar about that. He had a message here for, where was it? Tom Homan. Let me see if I can find this. Tom Homan was at the White House, and he was there as part of this whole spectacle this morning. They had the signs on the front yard. They had all the people doing hits, and Tom Homan was invited to a very early morning press briefing with Caroline Leavitt, and Caroline Leavitt came out and introduced him, and Tom Homan took some pictures, and he said basically the same thing. Hold on, I'm going to see where it is. I want to make sure that I have the right thing here. It is, oh, here it is. I think it's here. This is Tom Homan at the White House with a message, by the way, with a message for all illegal immigrants in this country.
The registration requirements under 8 U.S.C. 1302. If you're illegal in the United States, this message is for you. You cannot hide from ICE. We're actively looking for you. Federal law requires every alien in the United States who has been present in the United States more than 30 days needs to register. For those 14 years or older, you need to be fingerprinted with the Department of Homeland Security. Federal law requires every alien in the United States to tell DHS in writing if you have a change in address within 10 days of changing that address. Failing to register with DHS and failure to tell DHS about your new address are criminal offenses, and they're going to be treated as such. Starting today. Make no mistake, if you're in the country illegally and you fail to do what the law requires, we will prosecute you, you will go to jail, then we'll deport you.
Look at that. That's exactly what it is. We are going to deport you. Nothing will stop us from deporting you. You will be gone. You're not going to be here anymore. And then he paused to take some questions. One of the questions he got was, how are ICE agents feeling? This is a typical left-wing media reporter, by the way. Tom Homan's there. He's talking about how successful ICE has been. He's going over the numbers. He's reminding illegal immigrants, look, you've got two choices. You can leave voluntarily, or you can wait for us to come get you. And we're going to come get you. We're going to find nothing's going to stop us. Not the courts, not anything, because that's our job. And they asked him, they go, how are the ICE agents feeling about all this? And Tom Homan goes, they feel amazing.
The morale of ICE and Border Patrol is at all-time high because they're getting to uphold the oath they took, and they're enforcing the law. Border Patrol and the Biden administration, I met with hundreds of them. They felt like Uber drivers and tourist agents. These men and women join the ranks of ICE and Border Patrol to enforce the law, make the community safer, and protect national security. I hear it all the time. There's a lot of people in this country who don't like me. I don't care. But when I walk through an airport, I have many people walking up to me and thank me for what I'm doing, and I'm not taking credit for anything. The success of the border and immigration enforcement is President Trump and the men and women wearing that uniform. God bless each and every one of them. But I take a pleasure in seeing it because in 40 years of doing this job, people always want to say, why are you so emotional when you testify? Why are you so emotional on network? Because if they wore my shoes for 40 years, they'd understand why I'm emotional. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 years old that were raped multiple times by the cartel members. And when you get to your knees and you talk to that little girl and everything innocent and pure has been ripped from her, when you listen to the Laken Riley, 17 minutes, that young lady fighting for her life, don't just think, okay, a young woman died. Think of how she died, the terror that she went through, and these children are sexually assaulted. I stood in back of a tractor trailer and 19 dead people at my feet that baked to death. Illegal immigration is not a victimless crime. And so every sick person we take off the streets, especially child rapists, it makes this country much safer. Every illegal alien we arrest, public safety threat, one at a time, makes this country safer.
And that is Tom Homan, who, again, this is a guy, he's been there, man. We hear the stories, right? We heard the story about the 18-wheeler and how it was found in Texas, baking in the sun, and everybody inside suffocated. And those weren't Americans. Those were illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants who were brought over here illegally by cartels. They paid coyotes. The coyotes fled when the going got tough, and these people died. These people cooked inside of an 18-wheeler. They suffocated. They couldn't breathe. They couldn't get out. They tried to escape. It was impossible. And one by one, they watched each other die. And when Tom Homan came down to the border, when he came down to Texas, when Tom Homan opened up that 18-wheeler, what did he see in there? He saw dead people. We heard the story. This man saw it with his own eyes. He's seen countless victims, just like Laken Riley, just like her parents. And it infuriates him. It infuriates him that Joe Biden for years was on purpose allowing these people to come into the country, on purpose opening up our border, on purpose telling the Border Patrol to stand down. You heard him say it right there. He goes, these guys on the Border Patrol are ecstatic. Why? Well, they signed up to patrol the border. They signed up to send illegals home. They signed up to keep Americans safe. And what did Joe Biden have them doing? They were Uber drivers and tourists and tourism managers. People were showing up illegally at the border, and instead of turning them away, which was their job, what they signed up to do, what their duty was, they had to put them in a truck and drive them into the United States. That's depressing for these people. That's against every core fiber of their being. That's turning them into something that they never wanted to be, and that's also against the law. But it goes back to what AOC said. Joe Biden knew what the law was. He knew what the directives were. He knew what he was supposed to do. But being the chief law enforcement agent of the United States of America, he just chose not to enforce the laws. He knew it was illegal for people to come across the border without going through the vetting process or declaring asylum. He chose not to enforce it. He knew it was illegal for gotaways to run into the country and not show up for their court-appointed dates for hearings. He just chose not to enforce it. In fact, he aided and abetted them by flying them and driving them all over the country. And Tom Homan saying, now we have a president who says this is the law. Not new laws, same laws, new president. Same laws, new executive. Same laws, new person deciding which laws, which orders, which court orders are going to be obeyed and which ones are going to be ignored. And Donald Trump says we are going to obey every single law we have when it comes to the border so that we can make America safe. And Tom Homan said that's exactly what's happening.
The executive order in sanctuary cities is needed. I know a judge has just recently said, another district court judge who does a nationwide injunction, which I don't think they have authority to do. There's a reason they're called district court judges, but we're not going to stop doing what we're doing. The judges can issue these nationwide injunctions, but we're going to keep moving forward. The president's going to sign the executive order because sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. I'll give you one example. Laken Riley. She fought for her life for 17 minutes. If we didn't have a sanctuary city law in New York, ICE would have got him when he was arrested in New York. He never would have made it to Georgia. Laken Riley would be studying today in the college, and her mother wouldn't have had to bury a daughter. That is one example out of thousands. So we're going to keep putting the pressure on sanctuary cities. We're not giving up.
We're not giving up on sanctuary cities. We're going to keep the pressure on them. We're going to keep deporting people. We're going to keep sending these planes out. We're going to keep cracking down. Oh, did you see the nightclub raid? I got to tell you about the nightclub raid. But first, let me take just a minute because I kind of got off on a tear. Please make sure that you subscribe to this channel. If you're new here, we do this day. We're here. We're doing the same thing. We're reporting on what's going on. We're telling you the truth. And throughout the day, I pepper you with all kinds of fantastic content. So if it's your first time watching us on YouTube or on Rumble or on Facebook or on X, please make sure that you are subscribed to this channel and set the notifications so that you can get this information every single time we're live. If you're listening to the podcast, make sure you tell the podcast platform that you're on, I like this podcast. I would like some more of it. Because we're going to keep bringing it to you. And I do want to stop right away. We've been inundated with generosity and some really fantastic super chats already so far today on YouTube. CA Smirk dropped a $5 super chat and said, "Grateful I caught you. Getting used to the new show schedule. American flags and hearts." At Mark K. Thank you, CA Smirk. We're so glad that you caught us too. Yes, our new schedule is 1 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday. And then of course, whenever you want on any of our podcast platforms. Jeff Tim wrote "Run Mark Run," which, oh, by the way, I have an update on that coming up here in just a minute. And he dropped a $20 super chat. Jeff Tim, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I did do a poll. Because, you know, I'm all about doing polls. I'm all about doing my due diligence. I'm all about, you know, putting feelers out there. They say, let's put some feelers out there. Let's get a sense of what the public's thinking when it comes to 2026 and the Congress and who's best to represent them. But Jeff, I think I'm going to have some good news for you before too long. The Truth Seekers of Norway, always fun to hear from the Truth Seekers of Norway. They dropped 119 NOK, which is Norwegian. Again, I don't know what the exchange rate is, but I think that's pretty good. Writes, "Bless you all. Here's the truth. We are living in a terrarium. Do not get fooled by the sun god Helios that the Luciferians worship. The soul lore system is real. Earth is flat. Jesus loves you." That's, you know what? You can say whatever you want, but if you end with Jesus loves you, you're okay. In my book. And look at this, man. You want to look at this. Jennifer Lawson just out of the blue dropped a $50 super chat. No comments, no words of wisdom, no message for anyone. No, she wasn't in it for herself. I guess she just enjoys the show when she wanted to support us. And Jennifer Lawson, we really do appreciate your generosity. We appreciate all of our super chatters, all of our Rumble ranters. We appreciate everybody who does whatever they can, even if it's subscribing to the channel, even if it's just watching the channel, whatever you can do, because every single thing that we get, we put right back into the show. We are independent journalists. I am an independent broadcaster, independent news source. And that means that every single thing I do for you and because of you. And your generosity allows me to continue to do it. All right, let's get to this nightclub thing. So Tom Homan is out there just telling everybody we're not stopping. In fact, we're doubling down. Tom Homan is out there and he's saying we are going to keep going and going and going. We are not stopping. We are doubling. In fact, I don't have the clip, but some reporter at the White House said, if we're at 99.9% effectiveness, if these illegal immigrant gotaways and border crossings are down almost 100%, if barely anyone is getting into the country, why do we still need the emergency declaration at the border? Which basically she's saying, okay, we fixed the problem. Let's stand down. Okay, we fixed the problem. Let's pull the military away and let's get the Border Patrol out of there. Let's stop enforcing the border. Obviously, you fixed the problem. Yeah, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. The problem continues. We're going to continue to deport people. And that means that once you deport people, they're going to try their best to come back in. And if they try to come back in, we need to make sure we have all the assets, the physical assets, the military assets, the Border Patrol assets, the law enforcement assets, the drones, the wall, all that stuff. We need it to be in tip-top shape. There is never not going to be an emergency at the border. Just because our Border Patrol systems are now working doesn't mean we want to stop them from working. Anyway, here's this nightclub I think this was in Colorado, in Denver, I think. This was a nightclub that ICE raided. Apparently, it was I want to say it was a Tren de Aragua nightclub. It was underground. It was illegal. That I think that you just had they would just go there and everyone would party down and hang out. And ICE they went in there. This was incredible video. They're knocking through the window. They knock through the window of this nightclub, which looks like it's in a strip mall. And then they start yelling police. People start running out, and they run right into the parking lot where they're surrounded by ICE agents and police pointing guns at them. They get down on the ground. There's girls in they're scantily clad women. They're in their club outfits. This one dude has torn jeans. Everybody's running out. ICE starts rounding them up. They start looking for I guess people that are illegal. Which wouldn't you know it? They found a whole bunch. Hang on, I want to make sure. I get the numbers right. Colorado. Let's see what we have here. Over 100 immigrants arrested in Colorado. Look at this. This is the New York Times. DEA says more than 100 undocumented immigrants were detained in a Colorado raid. Officials said agents found weapons and illicit drugs inside the nightclub, including cocaine, methamphetamine, and a mixture of powdered drugs known as pink cocaine. I wonder if Hunter Biden was there. I miss Hunter Biden. I miss making Hunter Biden jokes. Thank God we have Adam Schiff, who's picking up where Hunter Biden left off with the stupidity. Federal agents raided an underground nightclub in Colorado early Sunday morning and detained more than 100 people who they said were undocumented immigrants. The raid occurred at a club in Colorado Springs, about 70 miles south of Denver. Federal officials said there were more than 200 people inside the club at the time, including 114 who were in the country illegally. So you got 200 people in the club. 200 personas en la club, discotheque, and over half of them were illegal. Over half of the people in the nightclub were there illegally. And DEA came in, rounded them all up, took them away. Officials found drugs. We already said that. Jonathan C. Pullen, the DEA Rocky Mountain Division special agent in charge, said in a news conference that the club had been under law enforcement surveillance for months and that drug trafficking, prostitution, and crimes of violence had been taking place inside the club. A spokesman for Fort Carson said each person involved in this incident is presumed innocent until proven guilty. We will look at everyone's situation on a case-by-case basis. Illegal activities of any kind do not represent our military values, because apparently there were some Fort Carson service members present when this thing went down. And that is exactly what Tom Homan is talking about. That's exactly the sort of thing he's discussing. He's saying we don't want these people in our country because first of all, they're breaking the law by being here. Second of all, they're breaking the law because there's drug trafficking, there's prostitution, there's probably human trafficking, there's illegal, illicit activity, there's violence going on just in this nightclub alone in Colorado Springs. Now multiply this by every town in America. These people are being deported because they're not supposed to be here. And oh yeah, also, they're breaking the law multiple times. It's really amazing to see how Donald Trump and Tom Homan and ICE have been so effective at just enforcing the laws already on the books. That's all it is. Just see what the law is and say, hey, you know what? We're going to enforce it. And if you do that, everything comes up roses. Speaking of the law, let's talk a little bit about Adam Schiff, shall we? Adam Schiff is shiffing his pants because President Donald Trump basically threatened him on Truth Social with imprisonment. Look at this. President Donald Trump wrote, "Hopefully Act Blue, the Democrats' illegal scam used to raise money, including from not allowed foreign contributions, is being looked at by authorities. The Dems only know how to win by cheating, something which they do better than any group or party in history. But now, with their terrible policies and candidates, and with people like crooked Adam Schiff, who demanded a full pardon from Sleepy Joe leading the way, it is almost impossible to reach their money goals. The USA is wise to these scoundrels and crooks. Also, why did the auto pen give Schiff a pardon? Biden knew nothing about it. Who operated the auto pen? That is the biggest question being asked in D.C. They almost destroyed our country. They should all be in jail. They should all be in jail. That is President Donald Trump in one Truth Social post doing a couple of things. First of all, saying he's coming after Act Blue for illegal contributions from foreign countries, which they're not allowed to accept and distribute to candidates like the Democrats. He's coming after anyone involved in the scams that the Democrats have been running with Act Blue and other organizations. He's coming after Adam Schiff. And not only is he saying Adam Schiff should be in jail, but he's questioning the authenticity of Adam Schiff's signed pardon from Joe Biden, because he believes, like most people do, that the pardon was signed with an auto pen. And if the pardon was signed with an auto pen, does that actually make it admissible? Does that mean that it can hold up in court? Does that mean that Adam Schiff is actually pardoned of anything? That he is free and clear from any crimes he may have committed? Which, by the way, we have a little we have a little clip from Adam Schiff. This was Adam Schiff years ago when he was one of the managers in the Donald Trump impeachment. He was asked about blanket pardons for Donald Trump and any of his children, and if blanket pardons held water, held up in court, or were even constitutionally allowed.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
But no, I think that it's an effort not only to prospectively pardon people for things they have not yet been charged with and may never be charged with, but also it's the president's own family. It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family. This is the nature of those the president has surrounded himself with, including his family. And that is, it's been essentially a den of thieves environment. And so I think the president used this as his way of trying to protect those that have protected him.
Oh, look at that. Have you ever heard of an innocent person getting a blanket pardon? No,
well,
I
think
haven't.
The political scientists.
Why would an innocent person need a blanket pardon? I've never heard of that. It clearly is Donald Trump's way of protecting his den of thieves, his family. They showed Ivanka Trump, they showed Jared Kushner like they were guilty of some crimes. Adam Schiff, however, received a blanket pardon. And whether or not Joe Biden signed it, that's something that Donald Trump wants to get to the bottom of. He wants the Department of Justice to get to the bottom of it. He wants to know if any of Joe Biden's blanket pardons, including the ones for his family members, including the ones he signed for Hunter, including the ones he signed for Dr. Fauci, are any of those blanket pardons actually effective if they were signed not by the President of the United States, but by an auto pen? And by posting that Truth Social post, he's basically threatening Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff was on the Bill Maher show, and he, for whatever reason, used a phrase which is very not smart when your last name is Schiff.
Well, I think the political scientists have a term for the first 100 days we've seen, and they call it a shit show. To me,
by the way, he totally mispronounced Schiff. He used the more profane version. Here is the rest.
To me, it's been characterized by economic self-destruction. I don't think that's what anybody voted for in the form of these on-again, off-again tariffs, the on-again, off-again threats to unseat Jerome Powell and more. It's been characterized by the alienation of our allies, the sacrifice of Ukraine, the sidling up to dictators. It's been characterized by lawlessness. I think the grabbing of this guy, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, sending him out of the country, the flouting of court orders, including from the Supreme Court, and corruption, the presidential meme coin and the self-dealing. I don't think that's what the MAGA people voted for either. So I think you're right. It's been breathtaking in its scope. It's happened far faster, far more furious than we would have expected. And it may ultimately be, as you pointed out, Brett, Trump that brings Trump down. But I also think Democrats can't rely on Trump to self-destruct.
Yes. Oh, look at that. So now he's telling the Democrats, you got to go after Donald Trump. You can't let up on Donald Trump. You got to keep fighting Donald Trump. Keep in mind, Adam Schiff not only received a presidential pardon, a blanket pardon from Joe Biden, something that he claims nobody should really need, or you shouldn't need unless you're guilty of something. Not only that, but he also was censured by his peers in the House of Representatives. He was censured by his peers for lying, for making up evidence, for turning an impeachment hearing into a miscarriage of justice, for trying to enter and falsify evidence into an official House of Representatives investigation. I mean, he had an impeachment process and he tried to manipulate and create evidence that didn't exist and pass it off as official record. Why? Because he hated President Donald Trump. And the evidence he thought he did have was weak. It was unsubstantiated. It was stupid. It didn't prove anything. And rather than go out and say, you know what, I don't think we actually have evidence of this crime, so we're going to withdraw our impeachment, or say, you know what, we jumped the gun. Now that I hear what's going on, or I read this transcript, I realize that it was a perfect phone call and there was no quid pro quo and there was no obstruction. There was no collusion. There was nothing. There was no treason, and there's nothing impeachable under the Constitution of the United States of America. Instead of doing that, he said, well, this transcript doesn't prove my point at all. I'll just make one up and I'll try to put that into the record. And then, of course, he got censured. Censure, other than getting totally kicked out, censure, by the way, is the worst thing that can happen to a member of the House of Representatives. You can be stripped of your power and kicked out of the House like George Santos was for no reason. I mean, now he's guilty, but back then he wasn't. Or you could be censured like Adam Schiff was. And Adam Schiff was censured. So what did the people in California do? They gave him a raise. Adam Schiff was censured by the House of Representatives. So they said, you know what? Instead of being a representative, we're just going to make you a senator. So now he's Senator Adam Schiff from California. I don't understand California at all. I never, ever will. But that's where we are. Adam Schiff is trying to tell everybody that Donald Trump's first 100 days are a Schiff show. On the eve of one of the greatest stretches of presidential history, Adam Schiff and the rest of the Democrats, BT dubs, sorry, Keith, they're all trying to explain away, they're all trying to figure out a way to propagandize President Donald Trump's first 100 days as nothing but a failure or a Schiff show.
Well, I think the political scientists have a term for the first 100 days we've seen, and they call it a shit show.
Yeah. And they're doing it, by the way, with fake polls and fake stories and fake this and fake that and fake some more of this. There was a media report. In fact, there's a poll. There's a couple of big fake news stories that I want to cover. The first one is this poll that says Donald Trump's popularity is lower than ever before, especially with the economy. Here's Scott Bessent on the Treasury Secretary on, I think it was Meet the Press. Listen to this.
For the very first time, the president's polling numbers on the economy are underwater, with 53% saying it has gotten worse under President Trump, with 72% of those in our poll saying it is very or somewhat likely that his economic policies will cause a recession.
Okay, a recession. Now look at this. I want you to just check out this slide real quick. 72% say it's likely Trump's policies will cause a recession. It's an ABC News, Washington Post, Ipsos poll. Three of the most liberal-leaning outlets. ABC News, which Donald Trump just won a lot. I mean, keep in mind, Donald Trump sued ABC News and George Snuffleupagus for $15 million, and he won. Why? Because they lie. Donald Trump sued ABC News and George Snuffleupagus, and they had to pay out of pocket to the presidential library for President Donald Trump. And now they're running a poll that we're supposed to believe is unbiased. The Washington Post, the same thing. Washington Post has been in the crosshairs of President Donald Trump since he returned to office, again, because they lie. And Ipsos, don't even get me started. Here's the rest.
Your reaction.
Oh, well, Martha, I haven't seen the polls, and for the past 35 years, my business was analyzing data, so I think we probably got to dig down in those. But what I do know is that Americans are behaving very different than what the surveys say. So the surveys may say that, but consumers are still spending. So I prefer to look at what Americans are doing rather than how they're answering pollsters.
And it doesn't worry you, the poll numbers that you have seen?
When I start seeing data to the contrary, then we can look at that. But again, these poll numbers, and also when I look at some of the things that are being published, there was a story 10 days ago that said this is the worst April for the stock market since the Great Depression. 10 days later, the NASDAQ is now up in the month of April. And I haven't seen a story that says, oh, stock market has biggest bounce back ever. So I think
it certainly has gone back and forth.
I think a lot of this is media driven.
It's all 100% media driven. It's 100% media driven. They're running these polls over and over again until they get one that gives them a negative outlook on President Donald Trump. And Scott Besson says, hey, you know what? That's great. Your poll says that. You know what the actual data says? You know what spending says? You know what the stock market says? You know what consumer confidence says? It says the total opposite. There's nothing on the spectrum right now that shows there's going to be a recession. None of the economic indicators are there showing there's going to be a recession. We bounced back on the NASDAQ because of the tariffs. We're making money. Money's coming into the country. We're selling gold cards for $5 million a pop. We've already sold 1,000 of those. Where's your reporting on that? Why aren't you reporting on the good things that are happening? It's because you're the fake news, and your job isn't to report on things that are good. Your job is to try to figure out a way to make President Donald Trump's accomplishments look bad. Marco Rubio, he stuck it to Kristen Welker on Meet the Press. Marco Rubio just torched her over, again, this ridiculous Washington Post story about these children who they claim were deported but weren't.
Our audience, 3 U.S. citizen children have been deported with their mothers. Now, this is according to the Washington Post. The family's lawyer says one of them is a 4-year-old with stage 4 cancer, deported without medication or ability to contact doctors. The family's lawyers are also saying their clients were denied communication with family and legal representatives before being deported. And it's raising concerns about the issue of due process, that it's being violated. So let me ask you, is everyone on U.S. soil, citizens and non-citizens, entitled to due process?
Yes, of course. But let me tell you, it looks in immigration standing, the laws are very specific. If you're in this country unlawfully, you have no right to be here and you must be removed. That's what the law says. Somehow over the last 20 years, we've completely lost this notion that somehow or completely adopted this idea that, yes, we have immigration laws, but once you come into our country illegally, it triggers all kinds of rights that can keep you here indefinitely. That's why we were being flooded at the border. And we've ended that, and that's why you see a historically low number of people not just trying to cross our border, trying to cross the border into Panama, all the way down in the Darien Gap. I mean, it's been a huge help for those countries as well. On the headline, that's a misleading headline. Okay, 3 U.S. citizens, ages 4, 7, and 2, were not deported. Their mothers, who are legally in this country, were deported. The children went with their mothers. If those children are U.S. citizens, they can come back into the United States if there's their father or someone here who wants to assume them. But ultimately, who was deported was their mothers who were here illegally. The children just went with their mothers. But it wasn't like, you guys make it sound like ICE agents kicked down the door and grabbed the 2-year-old and threw him on an airplane. That's misleading. Yeah. That's just not true.
Yeah, look at that. Misleading, not true. He's literally telling her to her face, you guys are manipulating the information. The kids weren't deported. They were sent with their mother. The mother said, I want my kids with me. And there was no one else to claim them, so we put them on an airplane. Why? Because they're her kids. The Washington Post, they make up this story. They're like, oh, the ICE agents deported a 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, one of them with cancer. They're horrible people. They're not. The mother was here illegally. The mother went back to her country. The kids went with mom. And he's 100% right. He said, if we didn't do that, you would have said, we ripped the kids away from their mother. We separated the families at the border. We're horrible people. And Kristen Welker, she's not giving it. She's going at it another way. She's basically saying the same thing again, trying to get a different reaction. But of course, Marco Rubio is not a stupido.
Be clear, because I do want to get to the overhaul at the State Department. Is it the U.S. policy to deport children, even U.S. citizens, with their families, and I hear what you're saying, without due process?
They weren't deported. They weren't deported. They were sent. The mom was deported. They were sent home, or the moms were deported. They were sent home with their parents. Well, it's not a policy issue. It's, we're deporting you. Are these your kids? Would you like them to come with you? We'll be nice enough to ship them with you. I mean, they should be like, thank you so much for not separating my family.
Be very clear there.
Well, No. Again, if someone's in this country unlawfully, illegally, that person gets deported. If that person is with a 2-year-old child or has a 2-year-old child and says, I want to take my child with me, well, then what? You have two choices. You can say, yes, of course you can take your child, whether they're a citizen or not, because it's your child. Or you can say, yes, you can go, but your child must stay behind. And then your headlines would read, U.S. holding hostage 2-year-old, 4-year-old, 7-year-old while mother deported. So the parents make that choice. I imagine those 3 U.S. citizen children have fathers here in the United States. Yeah. They can stay with their father. That's up to their family to decide where the children go. Children go with their parents. Parents decide where their children go. Right. The U.S. deported their mothers who were illegally in America.
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, there you go. Take that, Kristen Welker, you big weirdo. Here's the story, by the way, from the Washington Post. 3 U.S. citizens, ages 2, 4, and 7, swiftly deported from Louisiana. The cases have renewed concerns that the Trump administration's expedited deportations are violating the rights of both citizens and non-citizens. 3 U.S. citizen children from 2 different families were deported with their mothers by Immigration and Customs Enforcement during the early hours of Friday morning. One of them is a 4-year-old with stage 4 cancer who was deported without medication or the ability to contact their doctors. According to their lawyers, both families were taken into custody while attending routine check-ins this week in New Orleans as part of the Intensive Supervision Appearance Program, which allows individuals to remain in their communities while undergoing immigration proceedings. Lawyers say the families were taken to Alexandria, Louisiana, a 3-hour drive from New Orleans, where they were prevented from communicating, blah, 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 blah. The cases have renewed concerns that the Trump administration's expedited deportations are violating the due process rights of both citizens and non-citizens. Again, when you're 2, 4, and 7, you answer to your parents, and the parents make the decisions for a 2-year-old. The parents make the decisions for a 4-year-old or a 7-year-old. That's what this country is all about. When you're a minor, your parents speak for you. So I imagine when this woman was deported, or these women were deported, they said, not without my children. And so they took their kids with them. And the fact of the matter is that the deportation laws, he's 100% right. If you come into this country illegally, you do not have the right to stay here for an uncertain amount of time, for years or decades, waiting a court case so you can get your due process. The law says you're going to be deported. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's really, I imagine, you know what's going to happen next? I don't know where they sent these kids to. Let's see. They sent these kids probably, who knows where they sent them. But wherever they are, wherever these parents were sent, they are going to have a line of Democrat lawmakers flying down there to demand their release. They are going to have Democrat lawmakers lining up around the corner. They're going to be getting on planes. They're going to be flying down to Venezuela or El Salvador, or I don't even know where these people are going. But they're going to go and they're going to have margaritas with the mamas. And they're going to say, this is a travesty. We will bring you back. I'm shocked they didn't. You know what? I'm really shocked they called them U.S. citizens and not Louisiana moms. That's not, they actually mentioned that the moms were here illegally. They didn't call them Louisiana moms. Louisiana moms deported from Louisiana with their kids. Donald Trump and Tom Homan have deported a Louisiana mom or 2 Louisiana moms. Maxwell Frost is going to get a whole bunch more frequent flyer miles from this. I imagine, well, it's probably, you know what? It's not going to be, what's his name? Van Hollen, because he's from Maryland. Who are the senators? Oh, John Kennedy. He ain't going nowhere. John Kennedy's like, no, I'm not flying to south of anywhere. I'm going to stay right here and make some puns about bourbon whiskey and Joe Biden. That's what he's going to do. Who's the other one? The long, lanky one who stabbed President Donald Trump in the back. I forget. Anyway. It's really amazing. Speaking of fake news, they even lie. This is the most amazing thing to me. The fake news, even when they get caught, they refuse to admit it. Even when they get busted outright, they refuse to take any responsibility for it. Even when they're caught in a lie, knee deep in a lie, they never go, you caught us, we lied. They continue to lie about their lies. 60 Minutes yesterday, Scott Pelley, and I don't know how this guy can live with himself. Scott Pelley, who I guess at one point was considered some kind of legitimate journalist, he went on 60 Minutes yesterday And he did a report about their boss, their producer, the guy who was the executive producer. He was in charge of 60 Minutes. This is the guy who said, you know what we should do? We should edit the Kamala Harris interview to make her sound less ridiculous and idiotic than she is. You know what? We're going to interview Kamala Harris. Then he went back and he watched it. He goes, that's horrible. We got to do something about that. Let's cut it up. Let's take one of her not so bad, horrible answers and put it where her totally god awful answer was. And hopefully nobody will notice. They got busted. They got caught. They ran a promo with a different answer to the different question. Donald Trump sued. That lawsuit is, I believe, still underway. But they got busted. So they came in and said, you guys, we're making some changes. You need to resign. The executive producer resigns, and now Scott Pelley's on there lying about why he resigned.
In tonight's Last Minute, a note on Bill Owens, who until this past week was executive producer of 60 Minutes. He was our boss. Bill was with CBS News nearly 40 years, 26 years at 60 Minutes. He covered the world, covered combat, the White House. His was a quest to open minds, not close them. If you've ever worked hard for a boss because you admired him, then you understand what we've enjoyed here. Bill resigned Tuesday. It was hard on him and hard on us, but he did it for us and you. Stories we pursued for 57 years are often controversial. Lately, the Israel-Gaza war and the Trump administration. Bill made sure they were accurate and fair. He was tough that way. But our parent company, Paramount, is trying to complete a merger. The Trump administration must approve it. Paramount began to supervise our content in new ways. None of our stories has been blocked, but Bill felt he lost the independence that honest journalism requires. No one here is happy about it, but in resigning, Bill proved one thing. He was the right person to lead 60 Minutes all along.
There are so many ridiculous statements in this one clip. I don't even know. It's going to take me all day to break through. First of all, Scott Pelley says, okay, this guy resigned. He resigned because Paramount is trying to be part of a merger agreement, which they need the government and the Trump administration to sign off on. So he resigned as part of this merger agreement. It's not at all why he resigned. He resigned because he's a liar and he got caught propagandizing in favor of Kamala Harris. It has nothing to do with the Donald Trump administration. It has everything to do with the Kamala Harris administration or the Kamala Harris campaign or the Kamala Harris failed clown show of a campaign, as I like to call it. Kamala Harris and 60 Minutes and God knows who else, they conspired to defraud the American public. They conspired to pass off as honest journalism, as an unedited interview. They tried to make Kamala Harris sound smarter than she actually was, and they manipulated the trust that they have with the American people and also have been given because they're a licensed, CBS is licensed by the government. They're a licensed television network. They violated that trust. They violated their oath. They violated their agreement with the audience and with the government, and they got busted. And instead of saying, oops, my bad, or oops, I'm sorry, or all right, we'll pay whatever fine and promise never to do it again, they're now lying again and saying President Donald Trump forced this guy to resign or he wouldn't let the Paramount merger go through. None of that is true. None of that is accurate. What was the other thing? He said something else there at the end. Hang on.
In tonight's last, none of our stories has been blocked, but Bill felt he lost the independence that honest journalism requires.
Okay, first of all, no, he quit because he felt we would be censored. There's been a lot more scrutiny on our stories. None of our stories have been blocked, which he conveniently adds. So there's been no change in our reporting. Nobody said you can't say that. Nobody said you can't do this. Nobody said that's not a good story. Nobody said don't you dare go on the air with that. None of our stories have been blocked, but he felt that Donald Trump was pressuring CBS. This guy got busted being a bad dude, being a dishonest journalist. This guy sullied the reputation of, I mean, you want to talk about news shows. Look, I know that the last 10 years or so, they've started to suck. I know ever since Andy Rooney died and they brought on Anderson Cooper, this show's just been going downhill. I get it. Nobody trusts 60 Minutes anymore. Nobody trusts the blonde lady, the old blonde lady who lied about Donald Trump. Nobody trusts the old black dude who interviewed Kamala Harris, and nobody now trusts Scott Pelley anymore either. No one ever trusted Anderson Cooper. But the fact of the matter is that these people are lying to you again. They're trying to tell you Donald Trump is the reason this guy got fired. And the reason that guy got fired is because he's a bad guy. He's a bad journalist. He was a bad boss, and he was a bad propagandist because he couldn't even keep the promo off the air that led to him getting busted. It's amazing how fake the fake news continues to be. Will they ever not be fake? I doubt it. I doubt it. It's really crazy. And that's why President Donald Trump does stuff like put signs up on the driveway so that the fake news media has to report on real news. If they're not going to do it on their own, then President Donald Trump will force them to do it.
White House has put up about 100 posters of what they say are unauthorized immigrants who have been arrested for violent crimes. You can see them there. They put them up on the driveway of the White House. If you look here, that's the West Wing just at the forefront, the executive mansion itself to the left. But what's particularly noteworthy about this location is it is right directly behind the positions where TV correspondents do their hits from the White House lawn. So therefore, no matter what network you're on, that includes MSNBC. If you're doing a hit from the White House right now, those pictures will be behind you. The White House doing a briefing in about a half hour about what they're doing here.
I'm so happy. This is the best 100 days I've ever experienced as I follow. This is the best 100 days, I'm going to be honest with you, I think probably ever. It's really fantastic. Hold on. There's one more thing that I wanted to share. Oh yeah, I have to talk to you about this poll. By the way, thank you to my VA lady, virtual assistant service, for the super chat. We got another $2. Woot woot. Kick Peach viewer numbers for MKSTR LFG. Oh, I guess that's kick butt. Kick Peach. I was like, wait, you're not from Georgia. Kick Peach viewer numbers for MKSTR LFG. For those of you that don't know, the peach is the symbol for the butt. MKSTR stands for Mark K Saves the Republic, and LFG stands for Let's Friggin' Go. I thank you, my VA lady virtual assistant services. Reach out to her if you need any virtual assistant services. Real quick, so there's been a lot of talk about Congress and how much they suck. There's been a lot of talk about Congress and how ineffective they've been and how they argue about dumb things and they don't pass things we want them to pass and they pass things that we don't care about. Nobody wanted them to take off 3 days because they couldn't agree on proxy voting for pregnant women or new moms or new dads or whatever it was. Nobody asked for that. It seems like every single day they're bickering over something silly. It seems like every single day we're finding out that, oh, guess what? There's rhinos in Congress, more so than we ever thought. There's rhinos. Like, we thought these people were legitimate Republicans, but we find out that they vote with Democrats more often than not. And I'm not just talking about John Rutherford, my own representative here in District 5, who, according to the New American Congressional Scorecard, as you can see there, has an F. He has a 53% as far as voting based on the U.S. Constitution. That means that almost half the time he votes against the U.S. Constitution. By the way, Liz Cheney had a 60, which means John Rutherford here in District 5 has a lower score than Liz Cheney. And she voted for Kamala Harris. Over here, you can see the other one, lifetime score. John Rutherford, 48%. Liz Cheney, 56%. Freedomworks.org, lifetime score, 57% for John Rutherford, 63% for Liz Cheney. And here, the Liberty score, they both get Fs. Neither one of them votes for libertarian causes. No one votes for, neither one of them voted for conservative constitutional causes. F. These are not Republicans. These are Republicans in name only. They're really the epitome of what we mean when we say Republican in name only. So I decided to run a poll because it's been suggested to me that because I am a conservative, because I am MAGA, because I understand the Constitution, and because I am able to give a speech and rally support and maybe even have some name recognition locally here in Florida's 5th District, that maybe maybe it would be a good idea for me to run for Congress and actually send some solid, conservative, make America great again, America first, Donald Trump style constitutionalism back to Congress. So I ran a poll and I wrote, who should be elected to Congress representing Florida's 5th congressional district in 2026? John Rutherford, the rhino, or Mark Kaye, who's MAGA? And I have to say, I'm fairly impressed with the results. I'm a little shocked that almost 5% of the people that followed me voted for John Rutherford. I didn't know that many of John Rutherford's relatives followed me on X, but 95.1%, almost 100% of the respondents out of 268 votes voted that I should, in fact, represent Florida's 5th congressional district, and I should contemplate a run for Congress in 2026. And this poll, while it is totally unscientific and really biased because I ran it on my own X account where I expected myself to win, proves that I would have, at least with these 268 people who hopefully live in the district, a clear-cut advantage. Now, again, this is not a decisive poll or a decision, but it definitely gives us something to continue to think about. Which is why we got a $20 super chat from Jeff Tim at the beginning of the broadcast that said, "Run, Mark, run." Jeff, I appreciate it, and I will let you know very, very soon if that is my intention or not. I'm leaning one way, like I'm really leaning one way over the other, like I'm really leaning. Anyway, more on that coming up. Listen, if you want to be the first to know anything that's going on with Mark Kaye Saves the Republic or what we're doing or Congress, if you want to get all the news throughout the day, whether it's live or pre-recorded, if you want to get all of our videos and our content and our podcasts, then the best thing, really the only thing that you should do right now is hit subscribe wherever you happen to be. If you're on Facebook, hit subscribe or follow. If you're on Rumble, make sure you're following. If you're on X or YouTube or wherever, set those notifications. Make sure you get notified every single time we go live. And if you're listening to the podcast, thank you very much, first of all, for your support. We appreciate it. Continue to listen to the podcast. Spread the word. You know, I get this from people all the time. People write to me and they go, "Man, Mark, you said something the other day and it made so much sense. And I tried to tell my wife about it because she's, not as conservative as I am, and I couldn't do it, or I forgot what you said." Or somebody says, "You know what? I was talking to my friends and I was trying to explain what you said and they said this, and I know you had a rebuttal for it, but I couldn't remember what it was. What was it?" And I go, "Look, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to reinterpret my own words. We record everything. So if there's someone in your family that you're concerned about because they're a liberal, if there's someone that you're trying to explain something to that you heard on this show and you can't really quite grasp it, you don't have to reinvent. You don't have to re-explain it to them. Just send them the link. Send them this video. Send them this podcast. Send them to my page. Say, hey, look, I think you would really enjoy Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. I think you could learn one or two things from Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. I think Mark Kaye Saves the Republic could really be eye-opening for you. Why don't you take a listen to Mark Kaye Saves the Republic? Why don't you watch a little Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, and then let's come back and talk about it, because we want to continue to grow our numbers. We don't just want more people watching our podcasts and listening to our videos or listening to our podcasts and watching our videos. I guess that's what you do. We don't want just more of, we want that. But the reason we want it is because this is a movement to make America great again. This is how it starts. You and I, it's like the preacher always says, go forth and preach the gospel. Go forth and spread the good news. If you're in church preaching to the faithful, well, you're preaching to the faithful. The real work, the real change comes when you go out. When the podcast is over, when the podcast ends, and you can go out and you can talk to non-Kayetriots. Everybody here is a liberty-loving, freedom-defending Kayetriot, or they're well on their way. But there's a whole bunch of other folks out there who aren't. Those are the ones we need to talk to. Those are the ones we need to convince. Those are the ones you need to bring into the fold. Send them here. I'll do the rest. I will make sure that they know who's really the enemy, who's really coming after them, who's really attacking them, who's really trying to help them. I'll let them know that we are in a battle, and they can be on the winning side or the losing side. They can be on the side of good or they can be on the side of evil. I'll let everybody know that they've got to stay vigilant. They've got to stay informed. They've got to stay inspired and enlightened if they want to stay in a country where the Constitution is king and their freedoms reign supreme. It's a constant battle. It's a constant fight. And we've got to stick together so that we can save the Republic. The after party for More Kaye Saves the Republic will begin in about 3 minutes or so. If you would like to join us, if you're like, wow, this was really great, I want more, no problem. Go to Kayetriots.com. Join us for the after party. It's in our Locals subscriber-only community. So if you're a member of Locals, fantastic. If you're not, you can join, become a subscriber, and you can be part of our members-only after party, which begins, like I said, in 3 minutes.